This module will include instruction on how to edit parts in the assembly area, assign colors and textures to parts, and to animate those parts. So if you're using the piston assembly that was constructed in the last module, you should have something to look similar to what is shown here. I'm going to left click out here on the work area so that none of the parts are highlighted. So if you remember from the last module, we have several issues we have to deal with. The first one is the connecting rod is so short that it interferes with the edge of the piston. The second is the piston is actually coming out of the cylinder bore, which we can't have that. And then third, this crankshaft journal doesn't even protrude through the piston case. So this was all by design so we would have something that we could correct or edit in the assembly area. So the first thing we're going to do is increase the length of the connecting rod. So I'm going to move my cursor over the connecting rod. When it becomes highlighted, I'm going to double click. And you'll notice that the rest of the assembly becomes inactive, and it's shown by graying it out. Also in the tree, anything that has a gray background is inactive. So here is the piston case, here's the extrusion, the fillet, and then down here is the crankshaft, the piston, and the wrist pin. The connecting rod is in white, which is now active. So this is basically the same as being in the area where the part was created. I'm going to move my cursor over here to the little plus sign next to extrusion. I'm going to left click one time. I'll move the cursor over sketch one, right click, left click on edit sketch. This ought to be familiar from chapter 5. And now we're in the area where the sketch was created that was used to create this connecting rod. So I'm simply going to double click on the dimension. I'm going to enter 4.75. And you'll notice how the connecting rod doesn't appear to be constrained to the wrist pin and the piston anymore, but that's not necessarily true. So I'm going to left click on Finish Sketch. Then I'm going to left click on Return. And the wrist pin and the connecting rod are still constrained together, and now all the parts are active. So we basically corrected two problems in one step there. So now the connecting rod does not interfere with the edge of the piston, and the piston doesn't come out of the cylinder bore anymore. So I'm going to left click out here in the work area. Now the next thing we need to do is correct the fact that this connecting crankshaft journal or pin doesn't extrude to the piston case. So I'm going to move my cursor over the crankshaft. I'm going to double click. All the rest of the parts become grayed out. If you'll notice in the tree, crankshaft, and all the procedures that were done to create this are all in white, which means they're active. So I'm going to move my cursor over extrusion 1. That was the extrusion that was used to create the part. Extrusion 2 is the bottom pin, which is the one we want. Extrusion 3 is the top pin. So I'm simply going to right click on extrusion 2. I'm going to left click on edit feature. And the extrusion that was used to create that bottom pin appears. I'm going to clear all this out and put in 2.0. And that will cause the pin to extrude through the piston case a little bit, and that's okay. And we'll left click on OK. Then we'll move our cursor to the upper right portion of the screen, left click on Return. And so now the piston does not come out of the bore, the connecting rod does not interfere with the piston, and the crankshaft pin protrudes through the piston case. Probably more than it should, but for instructional purposes it will work just fine. And then we'll right click, left click on OK. So now let's left click out in the work area, make sure that nothing is highlighted. Then we're going to left click on the side of the piston case. Left click one time, and then we're going to assign some color or texture. So I'm going to left click on these little double arrows right next to the text assembly. Left click on default, and we'll just pick anything. Doesn't really have to be anything fancy. We'll go with magenta. We'll left click on magenta, give it a second. Then if we want to assign any other colors, we just simply left click on that part, Left click on the little arrows. We'll hit default. We'll scroll down here and find something exciting. And we'll say smooth ash. And then we'll left click on the crankshaft. Left click on the double arrows, drop it down. Diamond plate. And if you can see, it's diamond plate texture now. So it's not really too much in adding textures or colors. It's that simple pretty much. Now we'll take and animate the part. And to do that, we have to come over here to the part tree. We'll drop these little plus signs down. And we're looking for an angle constraint. And I don't see one, so we can add one, which won't take any time, take any effort. And this is done so that we can drive the constraint and cause this piston assembly to rotate. So I'm going to left click out here in the workspace. We'll left click on constrain. And we're going to left click on angle here. And we're going to put an angle constraint between the case and the side of the crankshaft piston. So we'll left click on directed angle. We'll left click on this side of the piston case. You can see the arrow. And I'm going to left click on this side. And right now it says 0. We'll hit apply. And what that says is keep the angle between this surface and this surface at 0. Well, now it won't turn using the cursor. But we're going to drive this constraint. So we look in our tree here and we find there should be 2 angle constraints, one for the piston case and one for the crankshaft, and here they are. This angle constraint and this angle constraint are basically the same thing. So we pick either one of them, we right click, we left click on drive. Now, right now it's going to start with 0 degrees and end at 10. So why don't we see what that looks like. So we'll play it once. And it's just going to go to 10 degrees and stop. Okay, that was exciting. Now, let's plug in here. 360,000 or 3.6 million. We'll hit rewind. Then we'll hit play. And now you can see it is animated. Now if we want it to go faster, we'll stop it. We'll drop this arrow down, and this gives us some more options. We want it to start, end, and start, basically just keep going. And right now it's doing 1 degree increments. We'll do 10 degree increments. And then we'll rewind it. We'll hit forward. It's going a little faster now. And if we want, we can put in here 30. Or we can do 20. Or 10. Then we'll hit stop. We'll right click on drive constraint again. We'll rewind it. And this time we'll create a file that you can play, AVI file, and you can use that to show people, and they don't even have to have Inventor to be able to watch the animation. So I'm going to left click on forward. Make sure everything's okay. We do have the drive adaptivity and the collision detection turned off. If we had the collision detection turned on, then it would have found that our connecting rod was hitting our piston, but we've since dealt with that. So I'm going to hit stop, rewind. This time we're going to hit record, and we'll hit play. And the first thing it wants to do is it's going to save it somewhere, so I'm just going to tell it yes, save right here, that's fine. Already one exists. We're going to hit yes, and then we'll hit OK. Just take the defaults, and then it should be playing right now. And we'll hit play. And then down here, out of the picture, down in the very corner of your screen is going to be the drive angle box, and just let that crank away for a little while. Right now it's saving the file, and it takes a little while to do that. And so out of the screen is the drive angle box. It's minimized. Once it's run for about 30 seconds, you close that box. So I'm just going to left click on this X. You can't see it. You'll see it on your screen when you're using it. Then I'm going to go to where this part was saved, and that should be down here. Okay, so I located this file in 2015 folder. Here it is. You simply double click on it, and now we have a basically Windows media file. This is a Windows movie that is playing, so somebody could admire all this work without even having access to Inventor. It'll play in Windows Media Player or any other kind of media player. And that concludes the Chapter 7B module for animating, editing, and assigning colors and textures to parts.